back to Sacred Harmony, where the inner world finds its rhythm. Today's guest is Heron Payne, a self compassion coach and founder of Embodied Mind. Heron's gift lies in helping sensitive high achievers stop waging war with their inner critic and start living with radical self kindness. If you have ever felt like you're doing all the right things and still feel not enough, this episode is a soft, empowering nudge to come home to yourself. Welcome to the show, Ian. It's an honor to have you.
Thanks, Anya. Good to be here.
hmm So, what does self compassion really feel like in the body, especially for high performers used to pushing through the pain?
Um, I would say it feels a bit like a gentle breeze of fresh air um, when we live with a harsh inner critic, and we're able to find moments where we can soften to that critic and to ourselves. It really does create a lot of ease in the body and freedom as well.
That's amazing. And how does that differ from indulgence?
Well, I mean, indulgence is kind of just saying, "Oh, I'll deal with that later." It's kind of just t- sh- shirking your responsibility to some extent. Whereas self-compassion is more of looking at something like, you know, wow, this is really hard right now. I'm really struggling with this. How can I be kind to myself in this moment? And really taking a good look at the feelings, and then oftentimes when we do that, we're able to come back to the thing that we're really struggling with, and it's easier to manage. We can take it back on, we can bounce back faster, we learn more from our experience. So it really is less of a I'm not going to deal with this right now, and more of, how can I deal with this differently in a way that's kinder to myself.
And that's such a powerful distinction. So many of us confuse compassion with weakness. But the way you describe it, it feels like strength with softness.
Yeah, there's a saying in mindfulness circles, strong back, soft front. So in the soft front is, I can meet this moment with kindness. I can notice what I'm feeling, and I can be gentle with myself. But I'm also going to, set boundaries, stand up for myself, meet my responsibilities, and stick up for things that I believe in. So yeah, it really kind of it can become a bit of a superpower in that way.
Right. And why do you think mindfulness often fails to land for people who are deep in stress or trauma cycles?
Well, mindfulness means ultimately, taking a break to look at the contents of your mind, and not get carried away by the contents. And if you do get carried away, to kind of meet that moment with kindness. And when you're stuck in deep stress or a trauma cycle, the mind and also the body, which is another major part of mindfulness, can be a really scary place to be. So that's not an ideal time to start practicing mindfulness, or even if you do have a practice, sometimes it can even be hard to practice when you're in that place. So for people in that place, I think physical activity is mindful physical activity is probably a more realistic place to start.
Definitely. But how does embodied self kindness bridge that gap?
Well, embodied self-kindness means knowing what it feels to be kind to yourself in your body. So to be experiencing difficult bodily sensations and difficult thought patterns, and to be able to meet those moments with kindness. So, embodied self kindness goes beyond just sort of saying, may I meet this moment with kindness, may I be kind, may I be kind to myself, this is really hard right now. It's more you bring in touch, things like that, or or phrases like, may I be well, may my body be well. um so it really is getting used to the feeling of what does it mean to meet this stress in my body with a kind response, and sort of noticing the ease that that can bring about.
Yes, and it's one thing to understand mindfulness and another to actually feel safe enough to practice it when you need it the most.
Yeah, that can be hard. I know I've gone through some pretty stressful periods in my life. It actually took me quite a long time to develop regular mindfulness practice, just because, I was a bit of a worrier. I had a lot of anxiety and things like that. And so when I would go to sit down to practice, I would sit down and, I would just have a tape playing through my head, and I thought that I was supposed to sit there and get the tape, this repeating tape to kind of stop. And it just wouldn't stop. And so it just kind of became a cycle of this, this doesn't feel good and I'm not doing it right. Um, and, and so which really made it hard to stay motivated to do it. So the real shift for me came was when I realized, that tape that's playing in the mind, or, that difficult sensation in the body, it might be really uncomfortable. But it's okay for that to be there while I'm practicing. And my job is to simply just notice that it's there, notice it, name it, get curious about it. And if it fades away through that process, that's great. And if it doesn't, I can meet that experience with kindness, in that, what's happening is really hard right now. And I'm going to do my best to allow it to be there. And oftentimes when we do that, things can really soften.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And you work with sensitive high achievers. What inner narratives do they most struggle with?
Well, there's most high achievers kind of have a sense that they can't let up on themselves, or they're not going to hit whatever goal that they have set for themselves. And so that kind of creates the fertile grounds for a harsh inner critic. If my critic stays on top of me, I'm always going to hit my milestones and I'm going to achieve that success. Um, so I think that's the main one.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And what's one simple practice to start shifting those thought patterns?
Well, I mean, for achievers, achievement success is usually the goal. So for starters, just sort of shifting the narrative from, I need to push myself really hard and never let up, or I'm not going to get there, to, if I'm able to slow down a bit and meet myself with kindness during difficult moments, I'm going to learn a lot more, and I'm going to actually meet my goals faster because I'm going to be more resilient. There's a lot of energy that gets spent. The inner critic eats up a lot of energy, and really can slow things down, because we get stuck in unhelpful thought patterns and whatnot. And we spend a ton of time trying to fix mistakes and cover things up and stuff like that. And really, if we're able to be kind to ourselves, we can skip all that stuff and get back to achieving those goals faster. So I would suggest that. And the one, it's very simple, but not always so easy, is really to think of, when you're in a you know when you're in a stressful moment and dealing with a difficult situation, or even before, to think, if I had a good friend who was in this same experience right now, and having these same difficult feelings, how would I meet them? What would I say to them? What kind of tone of voice would I use? What gesture would I offer them? Would I give them a hug, or put my hand on their shoulder? And and then can I offer that same response to myself right now? And so that can be a helpful exercise to actually do before that situation hits. So my friend would think you could think of a situation that is difficult and for you at some point, and then how would I show up for a good friend dealing with this? And if you can just even if you can just get a little flash of that, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it starts to kind of reprogram that critic. Over time, it changes the neural pathway of the critic with these sort of small repeated applications.
That's beautifully simple. I imagine many listeners are hearing their own inner voice in what you just described.
Well, when it comes to growth, which is essentially change, um, if change can be really uncomfortable for people, the status quo is always going to be, what we're familiar with, and we kind of have a built-in bias towards the familiar. Um, so it's easier to stay as we are than it is to grow. And change involves discomfort. Growth involves discomfort often. And so we really need to get square on what is the motivation for growth. What is the thing right now that's more uncomfortable, than the discomfort of the growth. And so once the discomfort of the status quo gets greater than the discomfort required for growth, then there's usually motivation for change.
Absolutely. And can discomfort become an ally rather than something to avoid?
Yeah, I would say it can, in that it always has something to teach us. In the type of insight meditation that I practice, our discomfort, difficult emotions, unhelpful thought patterns, things like that they're all fodder for insight. So when we can be with the feeling, or be with the thought pattern, the story that's going on, or the difficult bodily sensation, it always has something to teach us. So discomfort in that way can be a powerful teacher if we can practice and learn to stay with it and not push it away, or cling too tightly to it.
That flips the script completely. Discomfort as a teacher. That's an invitation we don't hear enough.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we sort of live, it's a part of our societal conditioning to, and I would say maybe our neurological makeup as humans, to gravitate towards pleasure and push away pain. So it's a really normal thing to want to avoid discomfort. And in my experience with it, I've sat through some really challenging things in my meditation practice. Really deep sadness, thought patterns that just won't quit. I'm sitting for 20 minutes and I've got some tape playing in my head about, something that happened the day before, or something that's coming up that that podcast interview that I'm really worried about. um, and yeah, that really, it's hard. It can be hard, and in my experience, the tape will eventually play itself out. Um, and there's a lot to be learned about, the nature of mind and where we get hung up. The things that we struggle with, and the end results are, can be pretty profound.
100%. And what would you say to someone who feels too broken for self compassion to work for them?
Mm, yeah, that's a hard place to be, and I know what that's like. I know what that can be like. I would say Um, Nobody is actually broken. We're all whole people, just kind of waiting to remember our wholeness. And that brokenness is a place is kind of the most fertile grounds for self compassion when we can open to it. Everybody is deserving of self compassion, um, and even if we never got compassion from other people in our lives, we can learn to offer it to ourselves. I know this. I know this from experience. Um, so yeah, I would say you're not actually broken. You're just needing to remember your wholeness, and you are worthy of self compassion and compassion from others.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And have you ever felt that yourself?
Yes, I've been in some. I felt um, fairly broken for a good chunk of my life, um, and I was pretty hard on myself about it. Um, and the thing that really uh, shifted things for me was when I had a therapist once who, she said none of this is really your fault. And I think that's some of the most powerful words that you know anybody could hear from another person, or can learn to say to themselves, is that this is not your fault. This is the creation of experiences that happen to you in your life that were completely out of your control at times when you were really vulnerable. Um, and now you're sort of just living out this programming that was installed in you, as a kid and in your younger years, and it's not serving you as an adult.
Thank you for that honesty. It's healing to hear that even the guides have to had the walk through the fire of their own doubts.
Yeah, well, my sense of it is that the more that you walk through those things, the more you're able to really, see your own shadow and work through your own tra- traumas and challenges. That's better than any formal education that you could get as like a coach or a mental health professional, because you can really ground yourself in the lived experience of people who are really struggling and who have been through some difficult things, and understand what it's like to finally say, wow, this is really hard. It's not my fault. I'm doing the best that I can, and really own your goodness sort of in that way.
Mm-hmm. This conversation reminds us that healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who were beneath the noise. If today's episode stirs something in you, take a moment to pause, breathe, and offer yourself one kind thought. That alone is enough to begin. So until next time, stay soft, stay present, and stay true.